A gradual ascent to complexity from non-living matter is something that Darwinian evolution absolutely requires.
Evolution doesn't deal with how life started, it just deals with how life changes over time.
Of whale evolution, every one of those has been debunked. As a matter of fact, the picture they put in the textbooks, that's what it is. It's a picture drawn by artists.
Wow.
It's not what they really found.
All right.
It is what they really found. Some of the earlier ones, there are few skeletons, but Ambulocetus can be put together for almost a complete skeleton from 2 individual specimens. Basilosaurus has probably dozens of individual specimens that have been found. And it has traits like no modern whale. It didn't have a melon for echolocation. It had both canine and molar teeth, where modern whales have one uniform tooth. It had hind legs.
We had the Archaeoraptor, the feathered dinosaur. Well, that one got debunked rather rapidly because somebody had painted on feather imprints. That was a fraud right away. Then we had the coelacanth, which...
Archaeoraptor didn't have its feathered impressions painted on. It was fake in the sense that it was multiple species put together to sell. And that wasn't discovered until later. But that doesn't take away from the fact that we have Microraptor, Sinornithosaurus, Sensoropteryx, and a dozen others that are feathered dinosaurs.
Okay. Then we have Lucy.
Yeah.
And Lucy, I'm going to use a big word here, is a type of Australopithecine.
Okay.
Australo means southern Pithecine ape. Southern ape-like creatures, we find them in southern parts of Africa. That's where they get their name.
Okay.
Lucy has been so debunked now, but yet they will not let go of it. Everything we see about Lucy is it's an extinct ape.
About a 3.5 foot tall, 65, 75 pound chimpanzee-like creature.
Well, yeah, Lucy is an extinct ape, but she also has features of both more primitive apes and higher apes like humans. And there are multiple fossil specimens of Australopithecus afarensis, not just Lucy.
Bats, no change in 52 million years.
Actually, bat fossils recently found show that bats from about 50 million years ago didn't use echolocation, but could still fly. This is a transition that you don't admit exists.
What about things like living fossils?
Well, living fossils. You're not talking about me now, are you?
No.
Okay.
No, there's this term. So, for instance, I was in an aquarium in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and they had this giant display. It said living fossils, and they had this pool with horseshoe crabs floating around in there. Live horseshoe crabs floating around in this little pool, and then they had this display with fossils, things turned to rock, called horseshoe crabs.
Yes.
They looked identical.
Yes. What a live.
Horseshoe crabs have actually doubled in size since their fossil days. Every fossil size, the biggest one ever found has been about 30 centimeters. And now they're double that size.
Planets outside of our solar system that we've been able to locate are either too big or small, too close or too far away from their parent star, or they aren't terrestrial. They don't have land, which, makes it hard to stand. When we look at the evidence in this solar system, we find that no planet comes close to the necessities for human life. Whether it's a noxious atmosphere made of poisonous gas, or a planet bathed with solar radiation,
There are currently 60 exoplanets that fit the bill for being in the habitable zone and being roughly the size of the Earth, or within a size or two. But even in our own solar system, there are moons like Europa, Ganymede, Titan, Enceladus that could harbor life. The Earth is not special in that regard.
and we still see tortoises that look identical to the tortoise shells that we find in the past. That's the opposite of what we need for evolution. They say, oh, well, they were just perfectly designed for their...
Papaschelles and Odontoschelles, transitional turtle fossils, would disagree with you.
layers.
Well, that goes to the flood.
Okay.
Now, we talk about this tremendous geologic column in there, this nicely ordered fashion. That's not what we find.
Okay.
In other words, the observable evidence does not agree with what we see in our textbooks. Because what would a worldwide flood do? Well, we've got these great tectonic movements in there.
Okay.
Volcanism going on there. And all these tectonic movements would cause what we call tsunamis.
Okay.
It's one of those hard words to spell.
Tsunamis, yes.
Doesn't start with an S. The tsunamis, underwater tidal waves is what they are. Going along the bottom of those oceans at tremendous speeds, guess what they're doing? Burying marine creatures.
Oh.
They're at the lowest level, so they're being buried first.
Yeah.
So that's what we'd expect to find down there.
The sediments on the bottoms of the ocean, right, are being stirred up with these waves, and it's burying creatures very rapidly, so rapidly that it preserves their shape. It
Yes.
preserves all of the detail.
Yes.
And you're saying that's exactly what we would expect if the Bible is true.
And that's what we find down there too.
Tsunamis would scatter everything pretty badly, and fossil deposits like the red beds of Texas wouldn't contain just dimetrodons. It would contain also elephants. It would contain elk. It would contain every animal, land animal of the world. Even by your own logic, land animals would have all been included in that, I assume. But the fact that you think that only Cambrian era invertebrates are found in Cambrian era rock because of a tsunami is pretty laughable.
To believe that an amoeba could turn into a man. And that's accurate because we've never seen it take place. There's not an experiment that we could do to turn an amoeba into a man. It's not observable, it's not repeatable. That means that it doesn't follow the scientific method.
It really does, and faith is generally seen as a weaker position.
Of course you can't turn an amoeba into a man. It's not even what evolution is.